I want to preface this by saying I am not a paranoid person. I don't believe in ghosts. I don't jump at shadows, and I've always been the type of guy to look for a logical explanation when something weird happens. But what I experienced 2 years ago completely destroyed my sense of security, and it proved to me that the most terrifying things in this world aren't supernatural at all. They are entirely human. In the fall of 2024, I got a promotion that required me to relocate to Richmond, Virginia. I was 28, single, and honestly, pretty excited about the fresh start. I spent a few weeks browsing Zillow and eventually found a small, single-story bungalow in a quiet, older suburb just outside the city. It was a 1950s build with original hardwood floors, a detached garage, and a reasonable rent price. The landlord, an older guy who lived a few towns over, mentioned it had been vacant for about 6 months. The first 2 weeks were completely normal. I spent my days at my new office and my evenings unpacking boxes, ordering takeout, and getting a feel for the neighborhood. It was incredibly quiet. My neighbors were mostly retirees who kept to themselves, and the street was dead silent by 9 p.m. Looking back now, that silence is what makes the whole thing so much worse, because I wasn't actually alone. The first disturbance was so small, I didn't even process it as a threat. It was a Tuesday morning. I had bought a fresh box of Cheez-Its the night before, opened them, had a handful, and rolled the inner bag down before leaving them on the kitchen counter. When I woke up the next morning to make coffee, the box was still there, but the inner bag was completely unrolled, and about half the crackers were gone. I stood there staring at it for a few seconds. I lived alone. I didn't have a pet, but I had also been working 12-hour days and was chronically exhausted. I just assumed I had absent-mindedly eaten them while zoning out in front of the TV and forgotten to roll the bag back up. I brushed it off and went to work. A few days later, it happened again. This time, it was a gallon of milk. I had bought it on Sunday. By Wednesday, it was almost completely empty. I am not a big milk drinker. I only use a splash of it for my morning coffee. There was absolutely no way I had gone through nearly a gallon in 3 days. That was the first time I felt a genuine flicker of unease. I started wondering if my landlord was letting himself in while I was at work, maybe checking up on the place. It was a huge violation of privacy, but it was the only logical explanation my brain could come up with. Then came the third week, and things escalated from slightly weird to deeply unsettling. The bungalow had an old central heating system, and the thermostat was in the main hallway. I like to sleep in a cool room, so every night before bed, I'd set it to 68 degrees. But I started waking up in the middle of the night, sweating. I'd walk out to the hallway, and the thermostat would be pushed up to 74. At first, I thought the ancient wiring was just malfunctioning, but then I started hearing the noises. It always happened between 2 and 4 a.m. I would be lying in bed, the house completely silent, and I would hear a faint, muffled creak. It sounded exactly like weight shifting on a wooden floorboard. The problem was, the sound wasn't coming from the hallway or the living room. It was coming from right above my head, from the ceiling. I tried to rationalize it. It's a 70-year-old house, I told myself. Old houses settle. Wood expands and contracts as the temperature changes. Maybe it was a raccoon or a squirrel that had gotten into the attic space. But my rationalizations completely shattered on a Friday evening. I was doing a deep clean of the house, getting ready to host a couple of coworkers for a small get-together that weekend. I was vacuuming the living room and moved the heavy armchair in the corner to get the dust bunnies underneath. When I pushed the chair aside, my heart stopped. Sitting on the hardwood floor, tucked away in the darkest corner behind the chair, was an empty plastic water bottle and a crumpled-up fast food wrapper from a burger joint down the street. I don't eat fast food, and I exclusively drink tap water from a reusable Yeti cup. Someone else had been inside my house. I immediately checked all the windows and doors. Everything was locked tight. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken glass, no scratched locks. I called my landlord and demanded to know if he or a maintenance worker had been inside. He sounded genuinely confused and swore he hadn't set foot on the property since the day he handed me the keys. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on my couch in the dark with a baseball bat across my lap, staring at the front door. Every shadow looked like a person. Every gust of wind rattling the window panes sounded like someone trying to get in. The next morning, I drove straight to Best Buy. I bought 2 discreet, Wi-Fi-enabled indoor security cameras. As soon as I got home, I set them up. I put one in the living room, hidden on a bookshelf behind a stack of books, angled toward the front door. I put the second one on top of the kitchen cabinets, angled perfectly to capture the kitchen, the hallway, and the doors leading to the bedroom and bathroom. I made sure the motion tracking was on, linked them to the app on my phone, and went to bed that night feeling a false sense of security. I figured if someone was breaking in, I'd finally have proof to take to the police. I went to work the next day. It was a busy Monday, and I honestly didn't check my phone much. It wasn't until my lunch break around 1 p.m. that I finally sat down at my desk and opened the camera app. There was a notification. Motion detected. Kitchen camera, 3:14 a.m. My blood instantly ran cold. I was asleep at 3:14 a.m. My hands were physically shaking as I tapped the notification and the video player loaded. The footage was in crisp, black and white night vision. For the first few seconds, nothing happened. The hallway was empty. The kitchen was empty. Then I saw movement. In the ceiling of the hallway, right outside my bedroom door, was a square wooden access panel leading to the attic. In the video, that panel slowly lifted upward. I stopped breathing. I just stared at my phone screen in absolute paralyzing horror. The panel slid silently to the side. A pair of filthy bare feet dangled out of the dark, square hole. Then, a man dropped down onto the hallway floor. He was emaciated, wearing a stained gray t-shirt and baggy, dark sweatpants. His hair was long, greasy, and matted. But what terrified me the most was how casually he moved. He didn't look around nervously. He didn't tiptoe. He walked with the relaxed confidence of someone who lived there. Because he did. I watched through the screen as the man walked into my kitchen. He opened the refrigerator, took out a carton of orange juice, and drank straight from it. He stood in the glow of the fridge for a good 2 minutes, just eating slices of deli meat. When he was done, he closed the fridge. But he didn't go back to the attic. Instead, he turned and walked slowly down the hallway, stopping right in front of my bedroom door. The door was cracked open. The man stood there, perfectly still, just staring into the dark room where I was sleeping. He stood there for an agonizing 20 minutes. I was forced to sit at my desk, watching this complete stranger watch me sleep. Finally, he turned around. He dragged a kitchen chair over to the hallway, climbed onto it, pulled himself back up into the dark square hole, and slid the wooden panel back into place. I didn't even pack my laptop. I just stood up from my desk, sprinted out of the office, and called 911 from my car. I told the dispatcher there was an intruder currently living in the attic of my house. I refused to go anywhere near the property until the police arrived. I met 2 squad cars at the end of my street, showed the officers the footage on my phone, and handed them my keys. They drew their weapons and went inside. I stood on the sidewalk for 45 minutes, my stomach in knots, waiting for them to drag the guy out in handcuffs. But they didn't. When the lead officer finally came back outside, his face was grim. "He's not in there," the officer told me. "But you're not going back inside. You need to call your landlord." The police let me go in briefly, escorted by 2 officers, to pack a single bag of clothes. While I was packing, the lead officer showed me what they found in the attic. The space up there wasn't just a crawl space. It was surprisingly tall. In the corner, right above my bedroom, was a makeshift nest. There was a dirty sleeping bag, dozens of empty food wrappers, empty water bottles filled with urine, and a pile of my missing clothes. The man had been living up there since before I even signed the lease. He accessed the house through a loose vent on the roof. But the detail that still keeps me awake at night, the thing that makes me physically sick to my stomach to think about, was the floor of his little nest. Directly beneath his sleeping bag, the man had drilled a small, 1/4-inch hole through the floorboards and the drywall. The hole looked directly down onto my bed. He wasn't just coming down to eat my food. For the entire month I lived there, while I was sleeping, getting dressed, or just lying in bed watching TV. He was up in the pitch black, pressing his eye against that hole, watching my every move. The police assume he saw me installing the cameras that Saturday and decided to make a run for it through the roof vent before he could get caught. They dusted for prints, but they never matched him to anyone in the system. The guy simply vanished into the city. I broke my lease that same afternoon. I moved into a high-rise apartment complex with concrete ceilings, secure entry, and a 24-hour doorman. I threw away half my belongings, disgusted by the thought that he might have touched them. I'm safe now. I know objectively that no one is in my apartment, but the psychological damage is permanent. Every time I walk into a new room, my eyes immediately scan the ceiling for vents or access panels. If I leave a glass of water on the counter and look away, I'll pour it down the drain and get a new one. And sometimes, when the apartment gets a little too quiet in the middle of the night, I still find myself staring up at the dark ceiling, absolutely terrified that someone is looking back down.